Gators and crocodiles, this is internet personality Vangelus, and Skullcruncher ditched the onomatopoeia as he arrived in Wave 1 of Titans Returns' Deluxes under a new moniker. Skullsmasher and Grax made a loud statement, bringing a magenta-pantsed non-vehicle to the line on day 1, and declaring that the original headmasters are proud and present in Transformers Generations. If Brainstorm didn't already send you that message. Grax brings the G1 all hard and heavy, despite inverting the green and black placement on his limbs and torso. He's got a proper gold face paint application and a weird pair of black optics that mirror the ones seen on his head mode. And they are weird! The G1 toy had a black visor, and while this new Skullsmasher tries to evoke that, somebody along the production line didn't realize the face had a visor, and, well, now there are two weird, tall and thin eyes. The middle part of the visor has been painted to be part of the face. It's not awful, it's easily fixable, but it's the big stumble in what was otherwise a great representation of the original G1 toy head sculpt. Grax can sit in an actual cockpit this time around, no longer living inside his beast's mouth. There aren't any tabs or pegs, but the fit is snug enough to feel secure. The top hatch is a soft, pliable plastic, in a decision I can only call strange. The robotic crocogator itself looks lovely, with a startling length for a toy of its price point, and an equally startling G1 accurate combo of magenta, green, and bony grayish white. Truth be told, the green is a little deeper and metallic than it used to be, but that's only a boon in my eyes. There are some strips of tampagraphing on either side of the stomach meant to represent cockpit windows, and some rear toe paint apps that sadly don't quite color match the molded hue of the frontal claws. The eyes are delightful bursts of pure red, and the opening mouth is filled with sharp teeth and a cybernetic tongue, all molded in soft durometer gray plastic that holds its shape pretty darn well so far. As for bestial posability, the tail can swish, though if you get carried away, it may detach. The rear legs are static pieces connected by a limited ball socket joint that allows for basic movement, though front legs are way more articulated with a swivel and a hinge and a swivel and a hinge. Good times! But the best times are in the neck. The crocogator head has a ball socket joint that offers a wonderful range of motion in just about every direction, going above and beyond the needs of a deluxe price-pointed beast former, and totally letting the once cruncher now smasher of Skull actually see what's around him and above him in this mode. To transform him into robot mode, remove the Titan Master, remove the tail, parts forming, the sky is falling! After that, it's a very simple affair of unfurling the hind quarters into robot legs and peeling open the front quarters to form arms and a backpack. I should mention, doing the arms in reverse can be quite hard the first few times, as the angle-inducing shoulder tabs start off slightly too tight for their grooves. Things got much easier for me after the first couple conversion cycles, but if it's a chronic problem, then, get into those grooves with a file or something and just add that extra micrometer. Skullsmasher's robot mode is practically the definition of an updated G1 toy, with almost identical layouts of beast bits and color placements. The crocogator head forms a surprisingly tight backpack, which is great. The back of the legs are so hollow that there are literally no heels, which is not so great. Seeing two almost unmoved blocks of hind leg bulk right beside those vacant holes is almost cheeky. What a shame, because otherwise I am way into how this guy looks, especially from the front. His chest has got a few simple, crisp paint apps to bring out his sculpted G1 sticker-style detail, which is a throwback design gimmick that I am always happy to see. Sadly, there's no tech spec hidden behind it. Maybe Schrodinger's tech spec is there? We'll certainly never know. Skullsmasher's tail contains a pistol, which he can wield separately if you so choose. Or you can leave it in the tail and use that as a giant Titan Master pilotable cannon if you so choose. It also makes for a nice base mode turret add-on. Sadly, there's nowhere to really smoothly store the tail by itself. Its peg causes it to stick out from his shoulder just awkwardly enough to put me off. And while the slits in the plastic let it sit on one of Skullsmasher's forearm claws, it's wobbly and unconfident. Just enough to make me feel like this is more fan mode than design intention. Also, square and center in Skullsmasher's robot buttocks, you can find a peg hole for display stand usage if you're properly equipped. The Skullsmasher's Titans Return neck joint lets him, of course, look left and right quite easily, and he can get just a little bit of tilt out of the ball joint as well. No nod, really, because of his chin, but, tilt. That speaks for something. By the way, if you plug in his head in, you can pop this up to get a little bit more ball joint range if you don't mind, popping it a little bit out of the joint. Also, if you swivel this guy around so that the neck's going in the way you usually put these in, it doesn't connect as nicely. it's a little bit wibbly, and then it's really hard to get back out. On the first run of this guy, it was so hard to get out that often the little ball joint in there would give out before the neck connection. So just have both faces pointing forward, and your Skullsmasher will wear his Skullsmasher hat the best. He's got ball socket shoulders, which means they go forward and backwards really well. They go in like that really well. They can even do some lateral motion from about here to here. To go up, the transformation joint instead is used, and it looks kind of awkward because there's no cut up here for the ball socket connection. That kind of bums me out, because it makes this guy just look awkward, and then when I want to put his shoulder back down, that happens before that happens. There is a bicep swivel, and a single 90-degree elbow bend, and a glove swivel, which operates in place of a wrist joint, and it accomplishes pretty much the same thing. Also, if you want to, you can pop that forward, and that's exciting. His waist can turn from side to side quite happily, although as you do it, sometimes I've had this pop loose a little bit, and I need to make sure I'm not actually actively separating him at the waist, because that's not what we want to do. But then the hips, these were a thing. The first run of this guy, these hips were ragdoll loose on a lot of copies of the toys. Not all of them, but a lot. Canada's first run, I think, must be from, like, the second run for North America, because I think some running changes happen. This guy's ball socket joints in his hips, they're not, like, rock-hard tight, but they hold pose, you know? They're stopping at various positions. And that's way better than the first run American one that I heard about from Aaron when I was at TFCon earlier this year. The thigh swivels, however, this one is fine. This one ain't fine. Here, check this out. This is a GIF that I saw going around Twitter. Like, he can just freewheel his way around here. For whatever reason, on multiple Skullsmashers that are available right now, this thigh is pretty loose, but this one often isn't. It's weird. It's all very easy to fix with floor polish, because it's gigantic ball joints and mushroom pegs. Again, Aaron fixed his up so much that you could barely use the thigh swivel, so it was interesting to feel a loose one after that. The knee joint is a hinge that bends like 92 degrees. There's also a transformation joint, so if you want, you can unclick it and then get like a full leg curl. I think this is pretty cool. I never end up using this, and I don't like the gap that it makes there, so I usually just keep that clicked shut. I think it's also because it would be undoing a click, which to me is different than a transformation joint that just sits in place. The feet can untransform. That can be used for all of, like, one position if you want the toe up a little bit, but it doesn't really accomplish the whole lot. And really the only bummer about this guy, he's quite poseable, but the only bummer that isn't easy to fix is the fact that he kind of has no heels. He's got support back here, but none on the inside, and one could argue the inside is maybe even more important than the outside, and if these croco feet could just flip around to go into those gaps, things would have made a whole lot more sense. But nonetheless, he's not impossible to get standing, it's just that he is surprisingly awkward feeling to get standing in a pose, and it's probably not my favorite of Wave 1 by any means, but he's adequate, you know, he poses enough. Obviously he can make a posture, so good on you, boy. If you love yourself some G1-ass Skull Cruncher, then you will most probably be able to see past Skullsmasher's hollow and heel-devoid lower legs and awkward tail weapon, though I'm sure you'd agree with me that it could have been a fun, dopey sword. He's not the worst of Wave 1 by any means, but I've found him to be the least engaging to me of the four, which is really weird since he does a whole lot more right as a toy than Scourge. I think I am just not that much of a Skull Cruncher boy, despite my adoration of his hot magenta hindquarters. Anyway, this has been Internet Personality Vangelus, and here's some dumb personal trivia. Skullsmasher was the first Titans Return Deluxe I ever handled, only it wasn't this particular version.